Hello and welcome to the Herdline Podcast, hosted by Trace Johnson and the Herds Headset. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode where the Headset and Trace talk all things Marshall athletics. Be sure to follow us on X and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Now, sit back, relax, and let's talk the herd.
Welcome back to the Herdline Podcast. We are ready for episode 2. Trace here with you as well as the Herds Headset. We are ready for episode 2 of the brand new podcast that we just started, and we appreciate all the support on the first episode. You know, we've heard some good things from people, and seem to be very happy with how it's gone so far. So we appreciate all the support. You know, you can find us on any of the major podcasting platforms. You all know what they are already. You can find them pretty much anywhere: YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, etc. We're there, so we really appreciate the support. And the first episode it was more about football side of things, season in review kind of thing, superlatives, grades, etc. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to switch it over to basketball side of things. We are fresh into the basketball season. Well, I mean, now we're almost to conference play, so it's really rolling along pretty good. The Herd started out, pretty well so far this season. Some ups and downs, but we'll talk more about that here as we progress. But we'll go ahead and start with a little bit of just the state of the program. So, I feel like that's a good place to start because Marshall basketball has kind of been in a little bit of a strange position for the last few years. A lot of kind of ups and downs. Had a coaching change. Now we have, Corny Jackson's in charge now, second year at the helm. And first year, they won 20 games, so can't be too upset about that. But I have some thoughts about the state of the program and some stuff to go over and to say and so forth. But I'll go ahead and start with you, man. Whatever you think, whatever you want to start with, just go ahead and start with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, state of the program, I think it's in a good spot. There's not a ton that we can complain about as Herd fans because you take a look at the overall history of Marshall basketball. Of course, back in the way back days, they were consistently top 25. Really good program. However, since the modern day has kind of came, Marshall's kind of struggled at times, but they've never been bottom of the barrel. It's kind of a strange place to be in. It's almost like we stay in the middle of the road there. But overall, Corny Jackson is second year. I'll be honest, and anybody that follows me on social media, you'll have been able to see, and you can quickly call me out on it. It's completely okay with me. I was not a huge fan of the hiring of Corny Jackson. I'm a big Dan D'Antoni fan. I loved him. And whenever he was departed or let go or however that all came about, I wasn't thrilled because no matter what, if you were mad and fired him, why would you hire the assistant coach? Like,
Right.
That's going to get more of the same. But he definitely proved me wrong. Corny absolutely proved me wrong last season. Like you said, winning 20 games, developing pretty good roster. And in his first year, you can't ask for a whole lot more. And so fast forward to his second year, and we're about to the halfway point of the season. Overall, we're in a decent spot. We started off incredibly strong. I think what were we like maybe 4-1,
Yeah.
something along those lines. Really looking solid, really looking good. However, the last month has not necessarily been too kind to the Herd, as we are now sitting at 7-4. And we've lost some games that we shouldn't have lost, but at the same time, we've kind of bounced back here this last week and won some games that I didn't really think that we would win. The loss to Ohio, I think, was a big loss.
Yeah.
Really. You never like to lose to your rival, and that would have been a game that really would have generated a lot of excitement for the fans. That I think. But one way to definitely draw people back is going last week on Wednesday night and beating Western Kentucky. Probably what I would declare is our best and biggest basketball only rival. And so that was a great win, great performance overall, coming back. Of course, beating Wright State the other night in the nail biter by 2. So overall, not a ton that I can complain about. Now that we are past football season officially, no bowl games or anything, basketball season kind of really just officially started in Huntington. That's kind of how the mentality that I know Huntington to have. We'll have decent little crowds here and there in the first couple of months, but man, once the conference starts, that's when people start to come to the Cam Henderson Center and really jam that thing out. So, next game up is Troy on the road and different things, and they got a couple more non-conference I know. But now that conference is about to get underway, I think that we have got some exciting things that is about to brew here for the basketball team.
I agree, man. I mean, I think that they're in a pretty good position, all things considered. You know, the Sun Belt is, ever since we've been in it, and even before that, it's always been a wide open league. I mean, it's always a league where you never know who's going to win. I mean, even last year, 4-team tie for the regular season title. I mean, four-team tie, and that was with a 13-5 league record. We were 12-6. We were one game away from being. Could you imagine year one of Corny Jackson, and we end up getting a regular season title? I mean, that would have been crazy. But I mean, even at 13 or 12-6 and 20-13 overall, I mean, I would say you have to be happy with that first season. You know, leading up to that point, there was a lot of I feel like Marshall basketball over the last really 25 years or so has just been very inconsistent. Like, you know, we'll go through stretches where we're really rolling, and then it'll just all come crashing down. You know, like that's just unfortunately seems to be the trend. You know, Dan D'Antoni, which I know you said a lot of good things about him. I love the guy. I absolutely loved him. I mean, very old school kind of guy. And he was kind of, in some ways, he was his own worst enemy, but he did a ton of good for Marshall. I mean, just as an ambassador alone, he was phenomenal for Marshall and all the wins that he had. And I mean, he is by default, because nobody else had ever won an NCAA tournament game, he's the most accomplished probably. I mean, outside of, if you want to say Cam Henderson, because no other Marshall team had ever won an NCAA tournament game. And, we were rolling pretty strong there for a while. From 2015 through 2021, we had 6 straight seasons of winning records, which hadn't been done since like the 80s at Marshall. We were rolling pretty good, won the 2018 Conference USA tournament title, and ended up beating Wichita State in the first round of the Big Dance, which was just one of my best moments as a Marshall fan by far. I mean, it was sensational. Just amazing moment. Ended up winning the collegeinsider.com tournament in 2019, had a 23-win season that year. That was a good year. Ended up playing for 2 Conference USA tournament titles in that era. Also played for it in 2017, the year before we won it, and we lost that year, but came back and won. But then it's like, once we got that momentum, then it kind of went downhill again. After we had that, like I said, 6 straight seasons of winning records, the 2021-22 season, we fell back down pretty hard. Had a losing record that year, 12-21. And then the next year after that, 22-23, was, I think, in my opinion, the best roster that Dan D'Antoni ever had. We were loaded, absolutely loaded that year. And unfortunately, we just kind of fell on our face at the end of the year. Had a chance to win the regular season title in year 1 in the Sun Belt, but lost to Old Dominion, unfortunately, on the road, and then ended up losing early to Texas State in the Sun Belt tournament. So that team that had all the pieces, every single piece you would want, it just unfortunately did not live up to its expectation and its potential. Then the next year we ended up struggling again, 13-20 record, and that was Dan's final year. And it was just like, it was just too many inconsistent years. I feel like kind of led to that whole movement, of moving on to Corny. And, I agree with you. I mean, I thought it was a safe hire at the time, but it wasn't like one of those, oh man, this is a super exciting. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a super exciting hire, but I think overall, for it was a safe hire, and obviously he's proven that he's capable already, so it's hard to be upset with it now looking back at it. But at the time, yeah, it was a little bit sporadic. We have to string together more consistent years. We can't just go 1 or 2 years that are good and then two that suck. We have to be able to string them together. So I think if he can do that, he'll be in pretty good shape. So, but I would agree with you. I think the state of the program is in good shape. You're absolutely right. Once conference play hits, the fans turn out big time, especially for those Saturday night games. They pack it out really well.
Yep.
And I know that the Cam Henderson Center, for all its flaws and whatever, it's an old building, we get it, but there is not a funner place to go watch a basketball game than the Cam Henderson Center. When there's energy in there, it is a fun place to be. So it just is. I mean, some of those games in the past, some of my favorite moments as a Marshall fan, the way they used to pack that place out. So like, it can really get loud, it can get really energetic, and that's what you love to see. So I'm looking forward to that this year as well. So now looking at a little bit of the season, just up to this point, a little bit so far. Like you said, 7-4 record. They've lost some games they shouldn't have lost. They beat an 8-3 UMass team that looks like a real contender in the MAC. They're looking really good. Marshall beat them on the road, beat Toledo on the road, beat Western Kentucky by 16 at home, and Western Kentucky at that point was a top 100 net team in the country. So great win there. But unfortunately, they do have some kind of bad losses. They had a blowout loss to Virginia on the road, 104-78, but Virginia's ACC, so it's different. And then the one that really stands out to me, and I know I've told you this, is the one that I was at the Lipscomb game. Holy crap. They could not have looked any deader in the water from the start than that game.
Yeah, that may be the worst performance that I have ever seen. I watched the game, and I've never seen them. They couldn't shoot. They couldn't defend. It was just awful from start to finish. Like they didn't get any momentum going at all. So no, it was rough to watch.
It was extremely rough to watch, and you could tell that was not the same team that had been playing up to that point. And you can tell that's not the same team that's played since then. So whatever, something was, they were not zoned in. They were not mentally sharp whatsoever in that game. Lost that one 90-67. Like you said, lost to Ohio on the road. Ohio is not a very good team this year, 88-81. Seems like we always struggle playing in Athens in any sport. So it carried over here. And then the one that really is the heartbreaker that definitely would have been a nice win was UNC Wilmington. Ended up losing that game 70-69 when they shot 39 free throws and Marshall only shot 9 and lose by 1 point to a 10-1 team. That's a 10-1 basketball team. That is probably, could very well be destined for NCAA tournament, run. That would have been a great win, but unfortunately it did not happen. So, some ups and downs, but overall, you gotta like having, being 7-4 at this point. We've seen a lot worse. So, we're right in the thick of things, I think, in the Sun Belt Conference. There's a lot of teams in there that are kind of, record wise, we have actually one of the better records in the league so far, take that for what it's worth. But what do you think so far? How do you think the season's gone? Talking about a little bit of everything, how you think it's been so far?
Well, I always equate it back to what the best years of Marshall basketball were under Dan D'Antoni, like you mentioned at the start. And what was the Dan D'Antoni philosophy? It was to do terrible at the non-conference, but man, when the conference starts, that's when you pick things up. And I understand. Right. That's makes a lot of sense, really, if you think about it, because we've had this conversation before. If you want to get into the NCAA tournament, if you want to be ranked, you're probably not going to get ranked in the Sun Belt. It's just you could probably win every single game and still maybe get number 25.
Right.
So if you want to get to the tournament, you want to make noise. What matters the most is your conference. You want to win your conference games. You want to get into a good spot in the tournament, the conference tournament, and win that. Yeah. What I've appreciated so far this season is that we have seen a more consistent team than what we normally do whenever this time of the year begins to kind of roll around.
Right.
We've seen better wins. We've seen better performances overall. Of course, we've lost some games we should have won, and I think that we've also underperformed in certain points as well. But I think overall that we have seen a better start of the year than what some of the greatest Marshall teams in our entire history has seen before. So take that for what it's worth. And the beauty of being in the Sun Belt Conference is the Sun Belt Conference is not a basketball conference whatsoever. No. Really, when Marshall and Old Dominion came into the conference, that was a huge deal just because of the basketball standpoint, and James Madison too.
Yeah,
like those three schools, I honestly think kind of run the basketball, side of things in the conference. So, Marshall, like you said, they have one of the best records in the Sun Belt right now. 7-4 is not lighting the world on fire, but the good news is you don't necessarily have to light the world on fire to be successful in the Sun Belt. And it's all about getting hot at the right time. It's all about coming together as a team whenever it matters the most. And so we'll see what kind of takes place these couple of months and see how the team comes together. They got some solid guys. Jalen Spear comes to mind. He's basically your quarterback,
Yeah.
facilitating the offense and getting things moving and different things. So, they've got some good pieces. And so overall, I think that there's a good deal to be excited about overall in the future.
I agree with you 100%. And that's a great segue, because the next thing we're going to talk about is the standout performers so far this year. So yeah, and Jalen Spear right up there high on the list. I mean, he was a guy that, obviously was a big contributor last year. Some of the guys we had last year aren't with us anymore. Obina obviously went on to, the summer league and the NBA stuff, which phenomenal opportunity there for him. What a great 5-year player he was for us and all that kind of stuff. And then we lost Mingo. He was there 1 year and was gone. And, we had some guys that really played well last year. Jalen Spear came back, and I think you're seeing a lot better version of himself, and he was really good last year. So, and I agree with you. The Sun Belt's definitely not a league where you have to go out and win 30 games to win it. I mean, if you're, if you win 20 games or more, you have a phenomenal chance to win the league. So we're right there. We won 20 last year, and we're in the thick of it. It seems like we'll be in the thick of it this year. So we'll see how it goes. But looking at a few standout performers so far this year, I just wrote down a few guys and some stats. I'm a numbers guy. I like stats. I don't know. I've always liked that. But so looking at Jalen Spear, he's a senior guard. He's averaging 14 points a game this year, 3.8 rebounds and 5.8 assists. So that's solid numbers. I mean, that's anytime you can have a guy average nearly 15 a night, that's impressive. Guy that's probably standing out, arguably better than he ever has so far, Wyatt Fricks, is balling. He is balling right now. He's putting up 13.7 points a game, 4.9 rebounds and 1.9 assists, 54.8% field goal percentage, and 40% from three. My man is balling. I mean, that 40% from three is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that is impressive. And he's really having some great games. I mean, he's really he's leaned on heavily right now. You can tell, and he's a senior. He's been here a long time. He's really paid his dues. He's been a contributor, but now he's not just a contributor. He is a leading role guy now. And I love to see it. A new guy that we just recently picked up this year, Noah Oshudi, is playing really well so far. Senior guard, 13 points a game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. You got to love that. I mean, that's solid contributions. He made some big shots in that Wright State game. He's playing well, and you got to love that. And then another guy that just came onto the scene this year, transfer from Elon, Matthew Van Komen, is balling as well. 7'4". No, that's all you got to say. He's 7'4". 7'4". He's averaging 10 points a game, 8.5 rebounds a game, and he is tied for third in Division I basketball with 3.2 blocks per game. Now, I didn't write this in my notes, but I've been thinking it. If you look back over the last 10, 15 years or so of the best Marshall teams that have gone the farthest and done the most, what is one common denominator that they all have? A rim protector.
Yep.
You have to have it. I'm just going to say it right now. Look back at the 2018 Big Dance team. ID and Pinova led the country in blocks. Look at that 2022-23 team that won 24 games. Micah Hanlogden. I mean, top one of the top guys in blocks. And now seems like we have another guy that's going to be one of the top guys in blocks. So, for all the teams that Dan had, all the shooting, the Elmores and the Burks and the Loops and all these guys, Kerfman, all these different guys that could shoot the lights out, they all had a rim protector. And I think that really bodes well for us. I mean, I'm not saying that we have the necessarily, I mean, we may, who knows, but I don't think we have the shooting that those teams had overall. Like, I think we have guys that can knock them down. Obviously, I mean, Frick's is 40% 3-point shooter right now, but the common denominator is you got to have a rim protector. And right now, I really like where we are there. So, I know you kind of mentioned Spear, but who's kind of stood out to you so far this year?
Yeah, well, and to also just quickly talk about your point right there as well. You win games in college thanks to those big guys.
Yes.
Because, yeah, everybody likes to take the threes and whatnot, but the really solid teams are the teams that are going to drive the paint, get the easy twos, the
Yep.
layups. And so when you have that rim protector, it's a game changer. And like you mentioned, the best teams that we've seen here at Marshall, even going back to Whiteside,
Whiteside, yeah.
and so we've always had somebody that would be, a nation leader, and
All right.
definitely Van Komen can be that. He's big. I will say this: sometimes he goes back and forth. He gets beat sometimes, which is very strange to see with his size.
Yeah.
He needs to work a little bit more on like athleticism and I think some footwork things. However, he does have the potential, and so hopefully he can really turn it on this last little portion of the year. And you never know. But one guy that you talk about shooting. I think that he is a weapon off of the bench, and I think that as the season goes along, more and more that we're going to see more and more of him coming up in big moments is Caleb Hollenbeck.
Yes.
The guy can shoot the ball. He reminds me of an Austin Loop and a Kerfman and different
Yeah.
people like that we've had in the past. That, you know, he may not be your guy that can take it to the basket, and he may not be the most flashy guy with ball handling ability and different things, but man, he can shoot the ball.
Yep.
And so I really think that he is somebody to look out for. He's got 7.2 points per game right now, which isn't lighting the world on fire, but he has proven he's got range.
Mm-hmm.
And as the season goes along and they start to need some desperate points down the stretch, I think honestly we will see more and more out of him throughout the back end of the year because he's proven he's solid. And
Yeah.
now that we know the guys that are going to be the key contributors, he's going to be that guy that will come in and get you a bucket whenever you need one. So, but I agree with everything else that you just mentioned. Spear, he's your quarterback, doing tremendous, leading the team in points right now. White Fricks, he's really coming on, playing better basketball than he ever has in his entire collegiate career, to my
Yes.
opinion. And then so we've got a very solid team, and it's very surprising because whenever we were in the portal this last season, it's like, oh man, I don't know, losing Mingo, that was a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
and especially initially, correct me if I'm wrong, but he had announced that he was staying, or it was
Yeah.
rumored that he was staying, and then he decided to go down south to Charlotte. So, in my mind, I was like, oh, here we go. Here's the beginning of the end. But, I got to give Corny some credit. He definitely went to the portal. He definitely went and got some guys just from recruiting, and overall, very solid roster. And we've got depth, and we got even some young guys that, they've not came on the scene just yet. But I can tell you, I am so excited to watch Bryce Slay
Mm-hmm.
play some basketball. His father was awesome.
Oh
He
yeah.
was awesome. And I've seen tape. I've watched different things about him too, and he's even got into the game some, and knocked down some shots here and there. So I think that there's a lot to be excited for in the future, and also the now. That's a good spot to be in.
It is, and I like the point you made about the bench. I like the fact that we have a lot of guys. I mean, just the guys I listed off. I mean, that's 4 guys averaging double figures. I mean, you gotta love that. And then you have a lot of other guys coming off the bench that can go up and put up 10, 15 a night if they need to. Like they're not necessarily averaging that, but they can go in and they have the ability to do that. So I really do like our depth. And I like that point you made about Van Komen. Sometimes I notice it almost seems like like you said, I think footwork's kind of a thing that needs to be worked on a little bit. And I feel like sometimes if he would just go up stronger with it, down low like that, because he's so much bigger than everybody else. But
Right.
I mean, it's a lot easier for us to say that sitting here. But
Sure.
but no, I mean, he's averaging 10 points a game. So obviously he's doing enough to put up 10 a game, but like we're going to lean on him through the defensive side of things. I mean, that's, if you're tied for third in the country out of 360 some odd teams and blocks, you're doing a good job. So
yep, absolutely.
Looking forward to seeing what we can do the rest of the year there. I like what we have overall as a team. But so now looking ahead at some of the games we've got coming up, we're really getting close to conference play. Actually, first conference game is December 20th at Troy. That was that Troy was the team that made it to the big dance last year. They won the tournament title last year in the Sun Belt. So I would imagine that's going to be a tough game again. I mean, any game on the road's tough in conference at this point of the year. It's just going to be that way. The final out of conference game we have coming up is at home on Christmas Eve against WV Tech. So that probably won't be much of a game.
Probably
but
shouldn't be.
Shouldn't
we'll
be.
See what happens, but it shouldn't be.
We struggle with them. We got some problems, but
yes.
But that should be a win, obviously. And then our first home game in conference play is at home against Georgia State on New Year's Eve. So that should be interesting. And then looking ahead at some of the conference games we have, these are the teams that we play twice are App State, Georgia State, JMU, Coastal Carolina, Old Dominion, and Georgia Southern. And then the games in which we only play them once include Louisiana Monroe, South Alabama, Texas State, Arkansas State, and Southern Miss. So we have a nice schedule that's kind of like, all over the place as far as teams in the Sun Belt. You got some teams that are competitive. You got some conference title contending teams, and you got some teams that are just horrible. I mean, that's just some of those teams are just bad. I mean, Louisiana Monroe. I mean, so so I think we have a chance to really make some hay in the conference. If we can just, like I said, to start with, just play more consistent ball. That's what we've been lacking as a program over the last few years is just playing consistently. So I think if we can do that, we'll be in good shape. It's a very wide open conference. I mean, like I said, 4-way tie for the regular season title last year. That says it all right there. And there were actually 5 teams last year that won 20 or more games, and we were the only one that did, but did not get to claim a tie for the regular season title. So go figure. But so yeah, I mean, overall though, I would say the top half of the league is strong, pretty strong, but the bottom half is just dreadful. I mean, that's what, that was kind of how it was in Conference USA. Like you had those teams at the top, like us and Middle and Western and Old Dominion and teams like that were really solid, even UAB. But like some of those bottom dwellers were just horrible. So like, I think the Sun Belt basketball wise, if they can lift up some of those bottom dwellers to be more competitive, it'll be a better conference overall. So looking ahead at some of those games, with conference play looming, how do you see us going? I'm not going to ask for like a prediction, like a record or anything, but how do you feel like we're going to do in conference play?
Well, I went on here and I just kind of went through every single remaining game that we have this season. And so we're sitting at 7-4 right now. And due to the projections now, mind you, the experts, so-called, they will have us finishing out the season with 11 more wins, 9 more losses, which would be a total of 18-13 on the season. Now, the big thing was there's about 5 games that it shows about a 55 to a 45% chance. And so we'll just chalk those up to a 50-50 game. So they have us in the 50-50 games going a total of 5-5 on the season. Some of those I don't necessarily know how things will go. Coastal Carolina is one of them when we play at Coastal. And Georgia Southern is another one where it's kind of 50-50 at Georgia Southern and whatnot. So we just don't know. It's kind of hard to kind of gauge exactly what the rest of the Sun Belt is going to look like because everybody's non-conference schedules are just so different.
Yeah.
You got some teams that play a more difficult non-conference schedule and they'll come in kind of, lagging behind, but all of a sudden they get into that, like you said, lower tier, dreadful Sun Belt teams and all of a sudden win 5-6 games in a row and they're looking really good. So I, to kind of see how the rest of the season is going to go, I don't know for sure. I do believe, like we've said, James Madison's going to be a tough win. To be honest, at Troy, they're having a good season from my understanding, and that'll be a tough win on the road here very soon. Old Dominion is going to always be tough against us as well. And then the rest of the games, though, I don't really have a big problem with them. We could definitely be in and win the remaining games, other than those really three teams. And from what I understand of the Sun Belt right now. So with that said, I really think that Marshall's going to get another 20-win season. That's
Yeah.
just my prediction. Um, I think that they're going to finish the non-conference strong. I think that they're going to, I really believe that losing to Ohio was a wake-up call. And sometimes you need to lose, but
Yeah.
losing to a rival, and again, a lot of these guys probably don't even take the rival into consideration. It's not even a big deal. It's they don't know the history of Marshall versus Ohio.
Right.
But when you got a coach that does, though, I mean, Corny's been around the block. He's been here. He knows
Oh
the
yeah.
significance of those types of games. I think that maybe kind of helped light the fire for this team. And I would not be shocked whatsoever to see us win some more of those 50-50 games and finish out the season 20-11 or even greater than that. So that's my personal thing. From what I understand so far, having some solid contributors that we talked about a little bit ago, also knowing the remainder of the Sun Belt is just not that great. 20 wins is not out of the question.
No, not at all. I'm right there with you. I mean, I think we've got every possibility and all the capability in the world to go out there and have 20 wins again. And while you were talking there, I just pulled up the Sun Belt, the current standings in the Sun Belt. Obviously, nobody's played a conference game yet, but just overall records. The best overall record in the Sun Belt right now is South Alabama at 8-3. So we're 7-4.
Yeah.
So I mean, and we've been wildly inconsistent. So like, if we can just start stringing together, like I said, just like if we can just play a month of consistent basketball, and that doesn't necessarily mean win every game in a month, but like if we can, maybe nice, but like if you could just start playing consistently and not just have those games where you just fall off the face of the earth like Lipscomb, like if you could just avoid that, I think we'll have a real shot. I mean, last year, one game short of tying for the regular season title. So I mean, it's out there. We have the chance to do it. Yep. And looking at some of these other teams in here, Louisiana is 1-10, Georgia State is 2-9, Louisiana Monroe is 3-8, and Old Dominion is 3-8. Now everybody else is at least over 500. We have 6-5, 6-5, 7-5, 8-5, 7-4, 8-3. But man, there's some bad teams in the in the Sun Belt. I mean, it's Absolutely. Just you just can't sugarcoat it. There's some bad teams. So hopefully we can make some progress there. And I'd love to see him have a run, have a chance to make a run at the conference title, or at least, earn a high seed for the tournament, because honestly, the regular season title is important, but it really isn't the most important thing, obviously.
Yep. Pensacola is what matters.
Right. If we get hot in early March for the conference tournament, I'm assuming it's still in Pensacola. Yep. If we get hot there, that's all that matters. So we'll see what happens, but I think we've got a shot if we can just string together some consistency, but we will see what happens. So now moving on to a little different topic. We've been talking basketball so far. We have to talk about football for one big reason. We have to talk about the hiring of a new old defensive coordinator that is very familiar with Marshall and has been here before. And then Marshall just put it out recently, but it's been out there for a couple days now. But Marshall has hired Brad Lambert as their new defensive coordinator. Everybody familiar with Marshall should know Brad Lambert. I mean, this is his third separate stint in Huntington. He coached the Herd. He was an assistant from 1990 to 1995. So that's like prime FCS Marshall heyday stuff right there. He was there for that. And then he was the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, as well as safeties coach from 2019 to 2020. His defenses really were impressive at that time. Just looking, I wrote down just a couple quick numbers just to kind of back that up. 2019 defense was not nearly as good as the one that would follow it, but it was still 47th in the country in scoring defense and 57th in total defense. What we would give for that in 2025?
We'd be undefeated.
we'd have a chance to literally win every game except Georgia.
Except Georgia, right?
We could have been 11-1 if we had that defense. So just putting that out there. But then again, you got to look at the 2020 defense, which is one of the most legendary defenses, quite frankly, in program history. The COVID year, all the unknowns, all the uncertainties that went on that year. One thing was certain: Marshall's defense was going to freaking knock some people out. That was one thing that was certain. They were first in the country in scoring defense and second in total defense in the country. That just doesn't happen. They were an amazing unit that year. Never gave up. Only gave up 20. I think, just thinking back, I think they only gave up 20 or more points like twice the whole year.
Mm-hmm. Average 13 points per game against.
Yeah. That's mind-boggling to say that like a group of 5 program could lead the country in total defense or scoring defense, whatever it was, first and second. It doesn't get much better than that. And, obviously we know after all the issues that we've had defensively this year, with the 3-3-5 and all this stuff, Shannon Morrison was defensive coordinator and technically still was, but after about the halfway point, Gibson just called the defense. There was just a lot of disarray with that unit this year. And I like to see them bring back some stability, some a very proven commodity at this point. The guy has been all over. He's coached defense forever. He knows what he's doing. So I think Herd Nation is very excited to have him back. So go ahead and talk about a little bit about Brad Lambert coming back.
Yeah, Brad is a tremendous coach. And I'll start by saying this. I know that previously when Doc Holliday had left the program, his name was thrown around to become the next head coach of Marshall.
Sure was.
And I wouldn't have been opposed to that by any means. But with that being said, though, I even had a this last go around whenever Huff left, and we're now in the process of looking for a new coach. I had a short list. I put it out there of my top 10, who I would hire for head coach. And it's amazing. Tony Gibson was on the list, and also Brad Lambert was on the list. And the fact that both of them now are on the same unit coaching together, man, that is a dream scenario for Marshall fans. I don't think people really understand how big of a deal this is, because no doubt in my mind, Brad Lambert is one of the best coordinators today. He's got a lot of experience, of course, like you said. He kind of got his start here at Marshall, winning national championship there in 1992, and was a defensive ends and defensive backs coach. Then from there followed Jim Donnan to Georgia. Then from there was at Wake Forest for a number of years, about 9 seasons, 2001, 2010, as the defensive coordinator and inside linebackers coach. During that stint, they won a 2006 ACC championship. They went to the Orange Bowl, had multiple bowl wins throughout that tenure. Then he got hired over at Charlotte University, was their first ever football coach.
Yeah.
And he was there from 2011, 2018. And to be honest, it was kind of a head scratcher to me as to him being fired.
Yeah.
Because I think his last season they went 5-7. And you gotta put into perspective. Charlotte was a startup program, and that's hard enough, but a startup program that would be trying to compete in the FBS division is unbelievable. And so he was, climbing uphill from day one, but really started to get some talent together, and they fired him in a moment to where I really think that if he got another year, they maybe would have been able to go to a bowl game.
Right.
But, their loss was our gain, because after he got fired, he came to Huntington. And he was a part of some of the most legendary defenses here in program history. And, man, I'm so grateful for his time that he spent here. But then, as you know, he did climb up the coaching ladder again, went to Purdue for 1 season, Wake Forest for a couple more seasons as defensive coordinator there once again. And then this last year, he's been at the University of Kentucky under Mark Stoops as the head defensive analyst. So all that said, he's kind of getting up in years. I think he is 60 years old at this time. But he is definitely a man that has been around. He's got ties to Marshall. He's had success at Marshall multiple times,
Yeah.
and I honestly don't think that Tony Gibson could have hired somebody better than Brad Lambert. I know there were other names that were out there, J.C. Price,
Yeah.
now at Virginia Tech, but I don't think that you're ever going to kind of get him out of there. I think that he's really taken a role at Virginia Tech that Mark Gale has taken here at Marshall. He's your guy that's going to stay. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But overall, man, I cannot tell you how excited that I am to have Brad Lambert back because he gets the story. He has ties here. I think that him and Tony Gibson are going to work very well together. But with that said, we got to ask the question: what do we do scheme wise? Yeah, are we staying 3-3-5? Do we
Mm-hmm.
go to something different? Does Tony just say, "Hey, whatever you want to do, dude, you got it," or
Yeah.
does he kind of be a little bit stubborn and say, well, I'm a 3-3-5 guy, we got to do it my way? That's all questions that we're going to try and find out here soon. But overall, I guarantee you that our defense is going to be in a better position next year than it was this year. And two, Brad Lambert will be a good recruiter, a better recruiter than I believe Shannon Morrison could have been, just because of all of
Yeah.
the connections and the experience. And so, man, we are in a great spot overall with Brad Lambert being here. Absolutely.
I mean, we quite frankly stole that. That was like we stole him. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a phenomenal hire. I mean, I remember thinking at the end of the 2020 season, right before Huff got hired, and like obviously everybody probably has already heard about how he was really strong candidate to be the next man to lead the program, and like how there was all the drama with Mike Hamrick and the board of governors and all that stuff. I mean, it's been out there, and Hamrick wanted him, but the other guys didn't want him, this and that. So like, but even during all that, I said, man, I know it was very unrealistic, but I would have loved to have seen him stay on as defensive coordinator for that 2021 season. I mean, obviously though, Lance Guidry did a lot of good things for us. That was another guy that I was going to say that people really wanted to see now was Lance Guidry come back. But I mean, if you put it this way, if it would have been Lambert or Guidry, I would have been happy with it.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think I'm probably a little happier that it's Lambert, just because he's got so much history with Marshall, and like he's more. I mean, obviously Guidry was here too, and that 2022 defense was freaking lethal too. So like he did some great things. Lambert's done some great things. So you would have been happy either way. But I think this is a knockout hire. I think he's going to do a lot of good things. He's got a nice nucleus of talent coming back on the defensive side of the ball. It's already said they're coming back. Not to mention, the guys that they'll go out and get in the portal or what have you. They're going to be they're going to be in a lot better shape next year. It's kind of reminds me, and I know we've probably all thought it if you're a Marshall fan over the last decade or 15, 20, whatever it is, but like the 2012 season, how horribly bad we were defensively that year and how great we were offensively. The next year, we were like 3 touchdowns per game better defensively in scoring defense. I could see, well, obviously, if we're 3 touchdowns better next year, we're giving up like 9 a game. But I mean, I'm saying you could definitely see a significant increase in that. I mean, I'm just thinking what would be a good baseline to be at next year in scoring defense. I would love it if it was like 20, low 20s. I think that would be.
Yeah, me too.
If we're low 20s next year, we got a chance. I'll tell you that much right now. But like I said, he's got a good amount of returning players, and then they'll go out and get some different pieces, and I think it'll be a lot better situation than it was. But now I got to ask the question. I know you've already kind of alluded to it. We're just going to go ahead and make our prediction with it right now. Does the 3-3-5 come back? Do they change it altogether? Do they tweak it? What are they going to do?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
Yes, it is.
I think that we will see a combination. I don't think you're ever fully going to go away from the 3-3-5 just because Tony Gibson loves it so much. It's been a
Yeah.
part of every team he's ever been a part of.
Yeah.
But with that being said, he's not dumb, and I don't think that he is so full of pride that he notices something is not working and is not willing to just say, I'll change it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I really think that we'll see a mixture. I think that we'll see some different fronts. And honestly, because of that, if we did have a mixture of a 3-3-5 scheme, throw in a 4-3 or whatever it is else that you want to put in there, I think that we will have a very versatile and dangerous defense because if you're an opposing offensive coordinator, you really don't know what to plan for.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may, but you will be busy throughout your week planning for two different fronts.
Yeah.
And that's going to be tough on the defensive side because your guys are going to have to really do double the studying and different things. Or if it can be done, it'll be dangerous. I mean, I'm telling you, it'll be a very big advantage for Marshall going forward. Especially, we've said it. Brad Lambert's a good coach, and Tony Gibson's a good coach, and so you put those two minds together. I mean, there could be some very very unique looks from the defense this next season. So I think that there probably will be a mixture of seeing some 3-3-5 linger, but I also think that we're going to see some different fronts as well because I think Tony realizes, hey, this just didn't work, and recruiting the guys that is needful for a 3-3-5 to be successful in the group of five level. It's a whole lot more difficult than it was at West Virginia or NC State or wherever else that he's been
Yeah.
because we just don't have the money to compete with getting those guys or the facilities or whatever it is that you want to call
Yeah.
it. So yeah, that's my prediction. We'll see a little bit of a mix.
I love that prediction, and the more that I think about it, the more I love it even more because you can't. You're going to have to game plan for multiple different looks. I mean, I think that's very beneficial for a defense. And just thinking of it in terms of this, you've got two guys. You've got Tony Gibson and you got Brad Lambert that have decades into coaching a defense.
Mm-hmm.
Just a defense alone, decades. So you can't tell me that they're not going to put their heads together, and you can't tell me that they're not going to come up with something that works. This year, I understand it. It was the first year. This was not ever going to be the finished product. This wasn't even going to be close to the finished product. This was just to see what worked or what didn't work. And, we obviously saw that it didn't work. We didn't have I don't think we necessarily had the proper personnel necessarily to run that 3-3-5 like we've talked about. You've got to have a lot of depth and quality guys at each position. And I don't think we necessarily had as much depth as we could have, but I think that will be very much addressed this offseason. I like to see what we're going to come back with. And, I think, and this isn't, and none of this is to remotely ever throw any disrespect at Shannon Morrison at all. This guy's a son of Marshall, been here, cares about this place, and he's never going to say anything disrespectful about him, but it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's already probably going to end up, at least of what I've heard, he's going to end up moving positions as the defensive assistant. So he's still going to be with the program, we believe. So I think they'll find a better role than defensive coordinator because that's a big job. And when you don't have the right personnel to do it, it's even harder. So I think now, like you said, when you got two defensive-minded coaches in there that have been successful defensive coordinators at a numerous amount of stops in Lambert and Gibson, we're going to see a lot better things. So we'll hope for that. Looking forward to seeing what they can come up with, but I'm excited. I think it's a phenomenal hire, and I don't think we could have realistically done any better.
Yeah, and I agree. And something that it's a good hire whenever Marshall fans collectively, I've not heard one person say,
No.
man, I wish that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And that's a big deal
It
because
is.
we all right now are Tony Gibson people.
Mm-hmm.
We really, I personally want to see that man succeed.
Yeah.
But now that Tony is building some guys around him
Yeah.
that we know, that we love, that we appreciate, that's only going to help generate fan interest. And I think we were third this year in total attendance in the Sun Belt Conference. And I'm telling you, don't be surprised this next season to see a couple of really, really high attendance. And then the year after that, if we have success with some home games that we've got with Boise State coming to town, oh man,
Hmm.
we may lead the conference. We'll be right there with App State, just depending on how the season goes. But yeah, it's a home run hire. Like you said, I could not really have planned out a better candidate for this particular job with the particular head coach. Like they're just going to work well together. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to see what Marshall looks like next year on the defensive side of the ball.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And, it's like we said, there's a lot of things to look forward to moving forward. We remember back in years past, we've had some huge crowds. And once we start turning this thing around, you're going to see that again. I mean, the fact that we got Boise State, hopefully that game still happens, the Boise game. Hopefully they don't buy us out or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is a phenomenal game to have. So the things are looking up, and you're going to see a big difference for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we gotta briefly just touch on the fact that we also hired a new general manager along with the Lambert news. New general manager got hired, Alex Jones. Not very obviously familiar with him, but I believe he came over from Austin P. Right? Is that where he was? Or am I
Believe he did.
am I off on that? I cannot remember, but regardless, that seems like another hire that people were seeming like have nice opinions about. I mean, I don't really honestly can't tell you what goes into being a general manager of a college football program, but
Yeah. Alex Jones he came from Arkansas State.
Arkansas State.
Yes. And to give you a little bit more information about him, he was at Marshall a number of years ago. So this is actually another homecoming too. So this is something I really, it's kind of a newer thing in college football, general manager.
Yeah.
But it's needful. You got to have these guys now because it's that big of a business.
Mm-hmm.
So, big, and I would say a good hire overall for Marshall because from what I understand, there was nobody that ever had an ill will or something negative to say about him at his time here. And he did a good job there at Arkansas State, from what I understand as well. So overall, I think good hire.
It's awesome, and I apologize for not having done my research on that. We just focused too heavily on Brad Lambert, because that's really the big news at the moment. No disrespect or anything, but like that's the football side or football fans. We want to talk about a new defensive coordinator. That's just what it is. But so congratulations to Alex Jones getting hired. Hopefully he can do some great things for us. And you're right, the whole landscape of college football is totally different than it used to be. So we need this needs to be in place for future. That's just what it needs to be, moving forward. So looking forward to seeing what the future holds for the Herd for sure. But with that, we have come to the end of season 1, episode 2 of the Herd Line podcast. I think we had some nice conversations on here. Basketball, that really now is when we're getting to the crux of it. So we're going to see what really comes of the season. We've been up and down so far, 7-4, pretty good start, but we want to see what we can do in conference play. And then football, the offseason is going to keep ratcheting up. The transfer portal's looming. So we're going to have that to look forward to or to dread, depending on which side you fall on. So, it's an exciting time for Marshall right now, even in the winter sports or whatever. We got a lot to look forward to. So looking forward to coming up with a lot more topics and discussions for you all, moving forward for different podcasts. So if you got anything else to add, we'll go ahead and close it out. But if you got anything to add before we close out, go right ahead.
No, man, I'm good. Go Herd.
Go Herd, baby. Looking forward to the next one. We'll see y'all later.